One Great Earth. My name is Dan. Got a bit to get into today. Most importantly, we'll start out with current temperatures. Global temperature change relative to 1961-2010 Celsius after the 70s and escalating tremendously for decades. That is from 80s, 90s to 2023. Very intense heating. Not a heat wave. It is climate change. Climate change enhances weather. It enhances an already existing climate. This is temperature change in Detroit, Michigan since 1850. You can see these industrialized cities, it isn't just the toxins in the air and chemicals in the air that are dangerous. It is warming up to a point that it might not be sustainable for society. Those are the stripes. Agencies spell out how climate change will affect their employees and what they'll do to protect them. The Biden administration is looking to protect federal workers and agency missions in the fact of extreme weather. The Biden administration on Thursday unveiled agency-specific plans to protect federal employees from the risks posed by climate change, which follow an edict by the president to ensure government operations are resilient to more extreme weather. The plans range from updating federal buildings to better communicating with employees when they are at risk. They include detailed projection of which agency personnel are most vulnerable and where they are located, as well as specific proposals to ensure their protection. The blueprints are updates to those agencies first put forward in 2021 following an executive order calling for them that Biden issued in his first days in office. The new plans cover 2024 through 2027 and were created by each agency in coordination with the White House's Council on Environmental Quality and its Office of Management and Budget. The updated documents include projections on assets' exposure to extreme heat, sea level rise, wildfire, and other factors impacted by climate change. Forthcoming actions will include retrofitting and upgrading federal buildings for climate risk and changing the way federal lands and waters are managed. Each agency has included resiliency efforts into their core mission focus, the White House said, which is reflected in their policies, programs, and budget formulations. The Veteran Affairs Department, for example, is modeling how the effects of climate change will impact the care veterans will need in the future. The Agricultural Department's Forest Service is updating its land management practices to adapt to a changing climate, while the State Department is updating its foreign assistance offerings to ensure recipients include climate considerations. I haven't heard of that one. Climate considerations. With more than 300,000 buildings, 4 million employees, 640 million acres of public land, and $700 billion USD in annual purchases of goods and services, the federal government must continue to be a leader and partner in advancing adaptation and resilience, the White House said. Agencies are also factoring climate change into their daily operations, including how they will impact their employees. CEQ worked with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, for example, to create maps that demonstrate where concentrations of federal employees are likely to be exposed to extreme levels of precipitation, heat, sea level rise, wildfire, and flooding. protect employees, the Labor Department has provided guidance for agencies to take when the dangerous conditions arise. Agencies across government laid out specific mission and personal impacts from climate change in various scenarios. The Agricultural Department found that by 2050, 97% of its employees are likely to be in duty stations with temperatures in the 99th percentile of those seen between 1976 to 2005. At the Food Inspection Safety Service, for example, climate change could impact the way foodborne pathogens spread through animals, while also posing a risk to employees' health and safety in the workloads they take. Forest Service employees will see more physical and mental strain due to increased extreme heat and wildfires, while rural development staff will require new expertise as they handle an uptick in recovery efforts. In response to those concerns, USDA components are developing a plan to manage employee-related climate risk, rolling out guidance to personnel on preventing heat stress illness, and launching an emergency communication system for field staff. In its plan, the Energy Department noted it is considering how to keep workplaces safe for employees during extreme weather events. Several department sites are enhancing their communication systems to better alert employees about climate hazards at their workplaces, while others are boosting their air infiltration systems to keep employees safe when there are wildfires in the area. The Homeland Security Department, meanwhile, has issued extreme heat guidance to its Customs and Border Protection workforce. It is making its building more climate resilient by upgrading their heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems and building redundant water supplies. The General Services Administration is better at integrating flood risk formation into its management of federally owned buildings, while the Environmental Protection Agency is planning to assess the long-term viability of its facilities located in places likely to see severe flooding. Federal agencies are simultaneously implementing Biden's federal sustainability plan to make federal agency operations entirely carbon neutral by 2050. So, do all this work. I mean, federal employees are everywhere. You could just do this work targeting every area, every region, and saying, hey, instead of just a planning level like PL3, we're going to say these areas are prone to wildfires and therefore uninsurable. We're waiting for that now in the Southwest. Just like insurance companies pulling out of Florida due to the hurricanes and precipitation rain threats. Southwest is going to have, like New Mexico, for sure, where insurance agencies are pulling out due to increased climate change threats. It's not a coincidence. Now the federal administration is going to try to protect employees from the heat, from wildfires, from, they're going to try to open lines of communication, but I don't think we'll see it. I don't think we'll see an improvement in anything else, any system that's going on right now. This sounds like more like, hey, I can't come in today because there's a wildfire. It sounds more like federal employees calling in a tip line to say, hey, it's 98 degrees out and the humidity is this much. Very strange article. It does say here, it doesn't give me like a bill number or anything like that to be able to find it. Billions of people just felt the deadly intensity of climate-fueled heat waves. This is from the Washington Post, Sarah Kaplan and Scott Dance. Scorching heat across 5 continents set 1,400 records this week and showed how human-caused global warming has made catastrophic temperatures commonplace. Now, please keep in mind that when we talk about widespread temperatures, we're not talking about just a few cities that have experienced temperatures like this before. We've seen temperatures like this before. What we haven't seen is entire countries, 3/4 of countries, being reflecting this heat. It is not normal. Regardless if somebody convinces themselves that, okay, Detroit had a temperature like this in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Yeah, but Detroit to Dallas to Denver to Atlanta to all the Northeast, seeing such intense temperatures, and you've seen the Northeast hotter right now. The world is heating up. The Midwest did not have much of a winter, not much of snowfall. Did not even get to use. I don't remember shoveling like 2 or 3 times. This also, we did not have any lake ice this year, which I don't recall a time this in the Midwest we did not have lake ice. Careful in the Southwest. This is very dangerous. Mexico as well is hitting extreme temperatures for, I believe, the last 3 weeks. Oh, there's a listen. I'll save my voice and we'll listen.
Billions of people just felt the deadly intensity of climate-fueled heat waves. Dozens of bodies were discovered in Delhi during a 2-day stretch this week, when even sundown brought no relief from sweltering heat and humidity. Tourists died or went missing as the mercury surged in Greece. Hundreds of pilgrims perished before they could reach Islam's holiest site, struck down by temperatures as high as 125 degrees. The scorching heat across 5 continents in recent days, scientists say, provided yet more proof.
See, that's where people are tripping themselves up. They're like, hey, Detroit had heat like this before. We're not talking about just Detroit. We're talking about huge swaths of land, region, air, and water, sea, lakes, oceans, that are rapidly increasing in temperatures at a rate that we have not ever monitored before. It is unprecedented.
That human-caused global warming has so raised the baseline of normal temperatures that once unthinkable catastrophes have become commonplace. The suffering came despite predictions that a year-long surge of global heat might soon begin to wane. Instead, in the past 7 days alone, billions felt heat with climate change-fueled intensity that broke more than 1,000 temperature records around the globe. Hundreds fell in the United States, where tens of millions of people across the Midwest and eastern seaboard have been sweltering amid one of the worst early-season heat waves in memory. It should be obvious that dangerous climate change is already upon us, said Michael Weiner, a climate scientist at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. People will die because of global warming on this very day. That much of this week's heat unfolded after the dissipation of the El Niño weather pattern, which typically boosts global temperatures, shows how greenhouse gas pollution has pushed the planet into frightening new territory, researchers say. Scientists had expected this summer might be somewhat cooler than 2023, which was the hottest in the northern hemisphere in at least 2,000 years. But with summer 2024 just getting started, there are ominous signs that even more scorching conditions may still be on the horizon. June is already all but sure to set a 13th consecutive monthly global average temperature record, said Zeke Housefather, a climate scientist who works for the payments company Stripe. Next month, he added, the planet could approach or surpass the highest global averages ever measured. Whether the unyielding trend of record heat will ease soon, with an expected transition from El Niño to its cooler counterpart, La Niña, isn't yet clear, scientists said. Scientists are also still analyzing individual extreme weather events to determine how much climate change influenced them, if at all. What is obvious? The way humans have caused baseline temperatures to surge. We've got the highest greenhouse gas concentrations in the last 3 million years. Carbon dioxide traps heat, so the temperature of the planet is rising, said Michael McFadden, a senior scientist at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's real simple physics. Exceptional heat is arriving sooner and lasting longer. Though not all temperatures seen around the world this week were unprecedented, they were nonetheless evidence of how the climate has shifted in a way that makes hot weather more likely to arrive earlier and last longer. For some 80% of the world's population, 6.5 billion people, the heat of the past week was twice as likely to occur because humans started burning fossil fuels and releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, according to data provided to the Washington Post by the nonprofit Climate Central. Nearly half that number experienced what Climate Central considers exceptional heat, conditions that would have been rare or even impossible in a world without climate change. What is really standing out is how many heat waves are happening at the same time, said Andrew Pershing, the nonprofit's director of climate science. All week long, exceptional conditions could be found across much of Africa, the Middle East, Southern Europe, and Southeast Asia. Surging air conditioning demand crippled power grids in Albania and Kuwait. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the past week has seen more than 1,400 high-temperature records fall around the globe. Since the start of the industrial era, human activities, mostly burning fossil fuels, have warmed the planet by about 1.2 degrees Celsius, 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Earth's temperature over the past 12 months has been even hotter, averaging about 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels. To assess how warming increases the likelihood of a given heat event, Climate Central uses multiple global climate models to calculate how often that temperature would have occurred in the pre-industrial climate, and how frequently it is reached today. The technique, which has been peer-reviewed and published in an academic journal, underscores how warming has juiced the chance of temperatures at the edge of what people can tolerate. The mercury in Hartford, Connecticut on Thursday reached 98 degrees Fahrenheit, the highest temperature ever recorded for that day. Climate Central's analysis found those conditions are twice as likely under current levels of warming, and they will only occur more often as the world continues to heat up. Peter Fusek, Secretary-Treasurer for the Connecticut Tenants Union, spent the last few days going door-to-door in overheated buildings to check on low-income residents who were unaccustomed to such prolonged and severe heat. He recalled one East Hartford man who came to the door dripping with sweat, while the aged air conditioner wheezing in the background did little to keep his apartment cool. It's really kind of terrifying to watch the way these heat waves are happening in this increasingly volatile climate, Fusek said. Climate change isn't just making high temperatures and other extreme events more likely, Vayner said. It also makes every disaster that does occur more intense. Vayner's research has found that heat waves like the one currently unfolding in the United States are now roughly 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter because of how humans have altered the planet. Strong hurricanes are at least 14% wetter because the warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture, and storm surges are unfolding in oceans that are in some places more than a foot higher than they were half a century ago, allowing floodwaters to reach heights never seen before. We have been predicting for at least the past 2 decades that extreme weather would become yet more dangerous as the world warms, Vayner said. This is not a surprise. Early summer heat could hint at more global records. The global heat is to be expected after a historically strong El Niño pattern developed this winter and dissipated earlier this month, climate scientists said. The same thing happened in 2016, which had been the hottest year observed since at least the 1850s, until a surge of global heat began breaking those 8-year-old records a year ago. But this time, 8 more years of greenhouse gas emissions warming the planet means the otherwise natural boost in global warmth is pushing the planet even further into uncharted territory, McFadden said. That is despite the fact that the latest El Niño was not in the same league as the supercharged pattern of 2015 to 2016. The impacts of this event were amplified by the warm background conditions, McFadden said. What had been an intense El Niño rainfall became an extreme El Niño rainfall. El Niño, during which unusually warm Pacific waters rise to the surface and transfer vast amounts of heat into the atmosphere, has fingerprints around the globe, including heat across southern and eastern Asia and heavy rainfall in eastern Africa. Those fingerprints were especially pronounced not because this El Niño pattern was excessively strong, but because it developed in a world where greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise, McFadden said. Those effects we typically associate with a stronger El Niño event were much stronger simply because this El Niño occurred in a much warmer world, he said. It's not just the temperature of the Pacific that matters anymore. It is, what's the global temperature baseline on which El Niño is developing? Though El Niño is over, the echo of its warming influence appears increasingly likely to push 2024 average annual temperatures above the record set in 2023, Housefather said. For the month of June, global temperatures are likely to be slightly warmer than 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels, Housefather said. Last July brought the hottest average global temperatures scientists had ever seen. The hottest, they estimate, in more than 100,000 years. It's possible the planet surpasses that milestone next month, Housefather said, and it's almost certain to come close to it. Climate scientists have been predicting the end of El Niño will bring a global cooling trend, but they haven't seen it arrive yet. If temperatures stay at current elevated levels, we'd roughly tie last July, Housefather said. Either way, it's super hot. It's just a question is it hotter than we expected or not? A month or so ago, Housefather said he estimated relatively slim odds of the planet hitting another record-high average temperature next month. The chances have more recently appeared to reach about 50/50ths, he said. And after seeing such shocking warmth over the past year, he said he is too humbled to bet against another record. John Myskins contributed to this report.
That was the Washington Post. Millions of people just felt the deadly intensity of climate-fueled heat waves. You can see in this graphic here. Exceptional heat is arriving sooner and lasting longer. We're not talking about individual cities here now. We're talking about entire continents. It's much different than just saying, oh, well, Detroit had a temperature day like this before in the 70s, and not what we're talking about. We're not talking about tiny little samples. We're talking about very wide, huge samples on tremendous continents, big as Africa, throughout the entire Middle East, and South America, and Central America. A twinkling spectacle draws gasps nightly in a dark Utah farm field. Diane Thompson Garcia is trying to save firefly populations by letting people come see their summertime display. Like a fairy tale come true, says one visitor. This is an article by Julia Lyon, June 22nd. Spanish Fork, Utah. Not far from... Oh.
Spanish Fork, Utah. Not far from Main Street and the new houses that seem to be sprouting everywhere, grassy farm fields hold a summertime secret that thousands of people ache to see. It makes adults feel like kids again. It makes kids believe in a bit of magic. Only a lucky few dozen get invitations nightly. At the farm that Diane Thompson Garcia's family has owned for 5 generations, they are greeted like...
Her voice doesn't... It'd be a I didn't have it on that setting. But I will read this article. Her voice just is not reaching the mic. It's not moving the meter. Not sure why. Turned up the volume as far as I can manage. But Spanish Fork, Utah. Not far from Main Street, the new houses that seem to be sprouting everywhere. Grassy farm fields hold a summertime secret that thousands of people ache to see. It makes adults feel like kids again. It makes kids believe in a bit of magic. Only a lucky few dozen get invitations nightly. And at the farm that Diane Thompson Garcia's family has owned for 5 generations, they are greeted like old friends. Garcia is the guardian of the glow. I'm gonna have to let this read him. I don't want to say I'm losing my voice, but it's getting hard to speak.
This news story was written by Julia Lyon. A twinkling spectacle draws gasps nightly in a dark Utah farm field. Spanish Fork, Utah. Not far from Main Street and the new houses that seem to be sprouting everywhere, grassy farm fields hold a summertime secret that thousands of people ache to see. It makes adults feel like kids again. It makes kids believe in a bit of magic. Only a lucky few dozen get invitations nightly. And at the farm that Diane Thompson Garcia's family has owned for 5 generations, they are greeted like old friends. Garcia is the guardian of the glow. He leads visitors down a narrow trail after dusk disappears on a long June day. There often are gasps as they glimpse the first firefly of the night. For many, the first they've ever seen. Yet for the grown-ups who didn't think lightning bugs existed in Utah, for the children who can't believe such tiny, flickering creatures exist at all, Garcia is more than just a guide. As darkness settles, she begins to tell her story. Then the fireflies start the show. All Garcia wanted back in 2017 was for people to witness the fireflies on her Utah County farm before they were gone. Despite her many pleas to city leaders, it seemed inevitable that the development coming ever closer to her 24-acre farm would lead to more traffic and bright lights, the kind of environment that extinguishes a firefly population forever. I thought, I can't fight this anymore, Garcia recalled. Maybe I should let people enjoy them until we lose them. Fireflies need dark skies to spot each other's glow and create the next generation. That can be hard to find in a place like Spanish Fork, an hour south of Salt Lake City. A quarter century ago, the population just topped 20,000. It's now more than doubled. The decline of fireflies is hardly just a Utah problem. Across the country, their numbers appear to be rapidly shrinking despite the efforts of people like Garcia to protect them. She doesn't use any pesticides in her fields, but she does build fences and plant trees to create a patch of dark sky for them, while inviting in neighbors and strangers alike. The waiting list to visit her farm come June and July now exceeds 10,000 people. When you experience fireflies up close like this, you become their advocate, she said. At dusk on a recent Thursday, about 30 guests sat around Garcia's campfire, some roasting marshmallows, a sense of anticipation in the air. They were a key part of my childhood, said Jordan Fackrell, 45, who grew up in Kansas and now lives in Santa Queen, Utah. He and his wife waited with their 4-year-old son and infant twins as night fell. I want them to have that same feeling of magic I had as a kid. Across the campfire, 15-year-old Jenna Hullinger said she'd dreamed of seeing fireflies since she was little. She had volunteered on the farm with classmates from Independence High School in nearby Provo to earn her invitation to see the fireflies. Until tonight, she'd only seen them in movies where they looked like stars, she remembered. Around 9:30 p.m., Garcia started tracing the history of Thompson Century Farm, which recently was added to the National Register of Historic Places. Tonight, you're not only experiencing a historical farm, but you're experiencing something that has been a part of nature here for hundreds of years, she said. Fireflies need 3 things for the perfect environment. Who can tell me what that is? Children began to whisper. Darkness, wet ground, and tall grass, 10-year-old James Barth piped up. Yes, Garcia said. proceeding to explain a bit about the short period at the end of the adult insect's life cycle that makes them so unique. The boy fireflies will fly through the air and blink. The girl fireflies will climb up on the tall grasses and, if they think he's cute enough, they'll blink back. She laid out some rules for the evening. Stay away from the baby deer, don't chase the skunks, and leave the nesting sandhill cranes alone. And of course, cup the fireflies gently and briefly. Adults, you are the children tonight, Garcia said. You can run around the fields and catch a firefly. You can stay as long as you want. The group moved quickly down the grassy trail, letting their eyes adjust as the crickets chirped. Screams of delight drifted over the tall grass as the group spread out into the shadows. I got it, yelled one kid. I got one, cried another. Hadley Anderson quietly watched the twinkling display with her mother. Everything is so digital nowadays. Everyone's got their phone in their faces, the 19-year-old said. It's nice to see something real that God made. It's so much more beautiful. The group followed the fireflies for almost 2 hours, weaving in and out of the darkness. It was long after 11 p.m. when parents called for their children to come back. Time to go home. Yet many were reluctant to leave, no matter what their age. It's like a fairy tale come true, said Reed Younger, 31, who grew up in Spanish Fork but had never before seen a firefly. I never thought I would experience it. While Garcia may be an expert now, she had never seen a firefly until she was in her early 40s. She was born in Utah, grew up in California, and returned to this state after a divorce. She'd studied agriculture at Southern Utah University, and so in 1999 began running the family farm, which her great-great-grandfather, Samuel Thompson, started in 1852. I guess it was in my DNA, says Garcia, whose full-time job is assessing farmland for Utah County. She was in the fields, irrigating at night, when she saw her first firefly. It was like seeing a priceless treasure, an experience she wanted to share. What began as a few nights for friends, family, and church groups exploded 7 years ago, thanks in part to a popular Facebook group, into a 4 or 5 week commitment every night during firefly season. Volunteers on the farm get priority on her invites. They cut trails, build fences, and plant trees to help obscure the light. They clear brush, plant flowers, and move logs. All of this helps her protect fireflies and lighten Garcia's load for the free tours she gives to nearly 1,000 visitors each summer. That woman is tireless. She is a force for good on so many levels, said Christy Bills, the invertebrate collections manager at the Natural History Museum of Utah. She's giving an avenue to let people experience this wonder. Bills, who founded the Western Firefly Project, a citizen science project to track where fireflies exist in the West, said sightings have now been confirmed in 27 of Utah's 29 counties. We forget there's a lot of magic all around us, right in our backyard, she said. Garcia's enthusiasm appears to be infectious. More than 150 people recently attended the Spanish Fork Library's first all-ages Firefly Festival, which included a glow rave in the children's room. The city has even begun to respond to Garcia's concerns, changing construction standards in 2021 to require that streetlights and exterior lights on new city facilities and private businesses be dark sky compliant by shining downward. I remember going down and walking through her fields, said Chris Thompson, the Spanish Fork Public Works Director. I was like, this is a fantastic thing in our community. We should protect it. A similar transformation is what Garcia hopes is happening every night at her farm. She's especially focused on educating the state's youngest citizens. My goal is that kids will grow up in Utah and know there's fireflies and know what to do to protect them, she said. Even if new homes grow right to the edge of her farm, Garcia is determined to make sure the fireflies in her fields survive. If so, she hopes, it's going to be like the secret garden.
A great article there from Washington Post. Julia Lyon. I remember seeing fireflies when I was young, quite often. These days, no. I don't see fireflies. If you haven't already, please like the stream and subscribe to the channel. I also have a Patreon now. It is patreon.com/OneGreatEarth. The link is in the description. I would very much appreciate it at the very least to click the free membership tier, just so I can get a better idea of who's available, who's in this community. I need to take a moment to shout out Ashley, shout out Sarah, and shout out Mashawn. Thank you so much. It's very much appreciated. And for those that haven't seen, there is a free tier, as well as a $5 a month tier as well. If you appreciate the news I bring and I curate, please just let me know by clicking that free membership tier. I thank you for your time. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. I will be back. I have another stream planned for Florida. Was trying to save my voice a lot for these articles coming out. Hopefully you'll be able to fit this in today. I try to stream at least 2 or 3 times a day now, so I apologize if my notifications are going crazy because I'm posting so much, but it is just where I am right now. There might be a time where I slow down and just have one longer stream instead of just 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, an hour here. You know, just have like the one show one day. That might be coming closer than anticipated. Otherwise, I'm always scrambling for material, content, and trying to make it work. And if it doesn't, I move on. One last thing to check. The eastern seaboard, northeast, and the Gulf of Mexico are going to experience extreme coral reef bleaching within the next probably week or 2. There's no stopping it. There was stopping it before, but 5 years was up. Now we have 5 years of hell. When people said we had 5 years left, as 5 years left to change everything to a way that isn't going to cause us terrible harm. But now we're literally getting into unknown waters. So the coral reef bleaching, Florida, all across the eastern seaboard, northeast, going to see a lot of coral bleaching, and it's going to be a lot of devastation. And especially what would be detrimental to coastlines would be the loss of mangrove trees, especially in Florida. All right. Thank you again. Even if you are watching this on replay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Please take care.